I am talking to Nicole Mullaney, also known as Nikki Lamers. How are you?
I'm great, Stephanie. How are you?
Good, good. I'm excited to start this new year, that's for
Oh,
sure.
me too.
And I want to say thanks so much for joining me today. I love these writer talks and I miss them. I really miss them a lot.
I understand. I had so much fun chatting with you last time we talked. So I
Right.
agree. It's a lot
That
of
was
fun.
fun. I really miss it. And especially, and we know each other, so we really don't get to see each other or talk to each other as much as I guess people would think outside of these writer talks, right?
Right,
Because
right.
everybody's so
There's so much going on. Everybody's so busy, and
everybody,
it's tough. We have the text back and forth, and you
yeah.
know,
And
it's crazy when you think about it. It's like we're lucky if it's once a year.
yeah, I know, right? And time goes so quick. So now talking about time, let's talk a little bit about what changed for you as a writer or as far as any new books or any new happenings with your work, or maybe your books are in a certain place. Run us through something new or all the new and exciting things that happened for you as an author in 2024.
Oh gosh, a lot.
Ooh, I
Um,
know, I know.
First of all, I did release the 3 novels. Um,
Wow.
I was part of, so I was part of a group. My book was first book was Leave of My Duty, released in July,
Hmm.
and it was part of Piper Falls Station 28 series. They're all standalone novels, but every book was written by a different author. So we had like an 80-page document with all the different characters and places and settings and what things look like and how people acted, the mannerisms, and it was a big
Wow.
challenge, and it was really a lot of fun for me. Um, um, and people did all different things with their books, but I know for me, it was my first romantic suspense, so that was a lot of
Oh,
fun to write, and so I had challenges on so many different levels with that. So you had with the romantic suspense, with the collaboration, with pulling other people's places and characters, because I'm so used to doing my own. Um,
right, right.
and then making sure everything fit in and was consistent for a cop and the station, and that whole interaction as well. We
And did you
had
have to do
different
research?
they had a what?
Did you have to do research for that?
Yes. I mean, I do have friends that are cops, but this book, I felt like I definitely did more research and asked a lot more questions than I ever have for a book, because
Wow.
I have that public health background, so a lot of the health and wellness issues, like whether it be physical or emotional or mental, whatever they are, societal even, but all those are very easy for me to do because I have that background already, and this was definitely a
Exactly.
different way to address it. So I like things to be right.
Oh my
So
gosh. Of course,
um,
definitely, as do the readers, I'm sure. The readers
yeah,
wanna be
and it
sure
was
what they're reading
also
is
set in
accurate.
Texas. So I do have very close friends in Texas. A couple of my old roommates live in Texas, but I also there was that challenge because um,
Well, now
although I
let
passed through, I've never spent a long length of time there, and
right, right.
that's different as well. So it's I asked a ton of questions, took a lot of notes, and then I also would send it over. Is this right? Is this what I want? Like, how's this? I want to make sure there's
Wow.
nothing that's wrong, and
How
it
long
took
would you
me.
say that process? How long would you say that process was, just for that
Oh
alone?
gosh, I
When did you guys start doing that? Start
I don't
collaborating?
even remember. It's
I
almost
think
a blur.
you know what? I don't know if this is the same story that you told me about. This might have even been pre-COVID. I remember we were talking,
Oh,
I think
no,
we
it
did
wasn't the
it's
same.
something
That's not the
different.
same
Okay,
one. Yeah, but
okay,
yeah, that's right. That's something else, and I am actually still working on that one. That's a collaboration I'm doing with another author.
okay.
But we
That's another
we
exciting
want to
another
release
ex
it this year. And that one's different because we're writing the same book. We're
ah,
actually alternating we'll each do a point of view from the male and female perspective and then pass it back.
But now, do you find that challenging in the respect where you have your feeling and your vision with the character and where the character is going, the kind of attitude the character has, and then when you have to pass that along to someone else to like pick up where you left off? Is that how it
not
works?
like I felt like I could do this with just anyone. This is a project that, one, I feel like we have very similar writing. We also tend to have very similar ideas of where we want characters to go and things that make sense to us. It's funny because we were in a writers group together, and I remember thinking way back, well, I don't understand this. And she's like, I don't either. This makes no sense, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And and we just always agreed on that kind of thing. And then before we started, we actually came up with a rough outline of what we wanted for each of the characters and where we wanted to go. And we both shared different ideas. And then we do come back after a few chapters every time and, try to discuss different things of where we want to go, or if different ideas have arisen or things like that. So it's definitely a challenge, and it's definitely taken longer than anything else I've ever worked on, but it's been so much fun. And it's paranormal romance, which will be my first of that as well.
So now another question I have for you on that is, from an aspiring writer, for someone who is just starting out to write and the story basically is just falling on them because they are, going at it by themselves, maybe they would think if they had a writing partner or someone writing the story with them, it could be easier. But in some areas, I would find that it would be harder. So
it is harder.
It is harder.
Right? It is.
Don't get me wrong. Or work with someone, it would be easier. But I find that could be really challenging, difficult, and take even longer.
Exactly, and that's what it is. It is taking longer, and you really have to be careful about if you decide to do something like this with someone, about who you would want to work with, because you really want to work with someone that's the same as you.
Yes.
And
open-minded, that's willing to go along with things that you may suggest.
And you're also willing to do the same with them. You want to actually be able to work together, and you want to actually be very similar in your writing style, because you don't want the characters to look different from chapter to chapter. You want them to look like they're the same person.
Yes. And you don't want to read in the reviews because readers will pick up on it.
100%.
And they will say, when they see two names on the book, they will say, I could see where this writer, left off, and this writer picked up. Because they'll be able to.
And that's something we also planned on, we've been editing each other's as well. So that way, we're able to blend everything. So I think it's a good thing.
That's super interesting. That's something I don't hear talked about much.
Well,
as far as writer talk, I mean, on social media, I don't hear about that talked about much.
Yeah, we started it for fun. I really enjoy, the writers groups and stuff. I feel like that's a great opportunity for someone to be able to do different things. But even, I've done a couple anthologies. I had Jingle Balls last year, and that was one of my releases that came out this year. So I rewrote, added some content and stuff for my story that was in that anthology. That was pulled out, and I released that this year as a novella. So there was added content though. So that's, so it's still different than what was in the anthology, but it's still a novella, and that's an Unforgettable December. So that released this year.
And under Nicole Mullaney, or
no, this is all Nikki Lamers stuff. I haven't released anything Nicole Mullaney in a while. And my publisher for Dating Santa's Son just closed on January 1st. So I'm not sure where I'm going in that direction yet at this time. So that's
Oh,
why I'm
okay.
kind of focusing more on the Nikki Lamers.
Yes. Well, as we switch gears now into the different names for the stories that you wrote, what was the first story? So Nicole Mullaney is your sweet
Yeah.
stories, yes? You call them sweet romance, if
Yeah.
I'm not
They're
mistaken?
closed door, Hallmark style.
As opposed to
Sweet.
Nikki Lamers, which is the exact opposite, open door,
Open
right?
door, adult content. I address a lot tougher issues.
Mm. And what did you write first? Were you a
Nikki Lamers
Nicole
for sure.
Oh, Nikki Lamers. Now,
Yes.
what put you in that direction? When you first said to yourself, what let's go back even further. When did you know you wanted to write books?
Oh, my whole life.
Okay. So you were an avid reader as a child.
I was an avid reader, and I remember my dad loved romance. He always read a lot
Mhm.
of romance books, and we'd watch movies and stuff together. And I remember taking one of his books and reading it, and I just got really into a lot of romance books. I think I read, I don't know, but
And then you said, I want to do this. Were you
well,
the
I've
type?
always loved to write. Like even in elementary school, I always did really well in, all the English classes and the writing classes. I
Mhm.
always kept a journal or, that kind of thing. I always wanted to write. I wrote short stories for fun. I wrote scripts for fun.
Now,
Um,
were you the type of person growing up as a child who had a vivid imagination and sometimes would just, zone out and just put yourself
oh
like
yeah,
in a story, in a, you know what I mean?
100%.
Like, and people would be like, "Hey, Nicole, what are you doing? Pay attention."
Oh
So what?
yeah,
And you're like, "Oh, I'm in another world right now, thinking about my stories."
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's an exciting place to be.
Yeah,
I don't know if all writers feel that way, but that is definitely an exciting, I don't know if all writers do that, if they like zone out and just start to, because something could happen in the day, or you could hear somebody say something or see something on TV, and then your mind just starts to wander,
yeah,
right? Like just into the creative
all the time.
zone.
I've
Like
done that
you
my whole life.
put your own spin on that.
My parents used to say, sometimes we'd struggle to be like, Nikki, Nikki.
Pay attention, pay attention.
Yeah. Um, so even, at homeschool, wherever, but yeah, absolutely.
And then coming up with the name Nikki Lamers, how did you decide to have
Well,
a pen name, and where'd
Nikki
you
is
come
my
up?
name. It's Nicole. Nikki is short for Nicole. It's my nickname. My family has called me Nikki my whole life. It is me.
Okay.
um, and Lamers is actually my birth name. I'm adopted.
Okay. Which you've
And
also written stories about
so,
on
right. So
adoption.
it's the name on my original birth certificate. It was baby girl Lamers. So
Wow. Super, super interesting for people that do not know. I know we've touched on this before in the past,
yeah,
but there's a whole new audience out there and a lot of people that have not maybe watched our past talks or have read your books or don't know you. You're going to be a new author to a lot of people here that are listening. That's very interesting, that little bit of history to
yeah.
see where the pen name comes from. And it's actually your name.
It is actually my name.
And now tell us a little bit about your books that focus on adoption, because you have some stories with that.
I do. So I have Dreams Lost and Found and Finding Home, which are the only two books that I have ever written that have to be read in order.
Okay. And when did you first say to yourself, I want to write about this subject?
Well,
When did
I
that
always
take
knew I
time?
wanted to write about it. It was whether or not I had the guts to write about it. Because
Mm,
it's a whole different animal. And it's funny because people that have read those books and have read my other books will say there's a different feel to those books as opposed to, and I always put so much of, I follow the characters and you step into their shoes. But I think when I stepped into Samantha's shoes, which is the main character for those, female character for those two books, it's a little bit different too, because um, I always use, life experiences, but it's not my story. I always make sure it's not my story, but I have so much emotion and everything that's behind some of those experiences that it's just different. And it was also really close to, wasn't that far, long after I actually found, it was a few years after I found my birth mom, that I wrote those. It took me a while because it's so emotional, just really dealing with that in the raw sense and getting down to all of your feelings. Because if you're going to write something about that, you want to be real. And in general, everything I write, I try to be very real. And I think that's why I started writing Nikki Lamers in the first place, is because I needed everything to be raw, real. I wanted to see everything because I feel like that put so much more, you can see so much more into the characters and their soul and just everything about them. And every little thing they do and how they react to things is, helps tell their story. But I feel like you can really connect with the character when you do that.
Now, since you wrote journals as a youngster, would you look back at these journals and then incorporate maybe some type of, like you said, you are not Samantha, but would you incorporate some kind of the feeling that you felt at the time when you wrote these things down?
Absolutely. And that's the kind of stuff that I was looking at. So, you take into consideration, so when you're adopted, there's like millions of what if questions that go through your head. I mean, everybody has what if questions, right? We all have, we all do, but it's geared towards adoption. It's very different because, you grow up in a different family than where you come from, and whatever that family is, it could be good, could be bad, there's all different circumstances. And what if things were different? You look at, would it have been good, bad, and what direction, you have no idea. The millions of questions, and you question who you are, where you come from. You don't have family that look like you, or people think they look like you, but they really don't, or, you don't have, what's the nature versus nurture. There's so much that comes into play that you don't even think about, unless you actually have gone through it.
Right. I could see that. So would you say also writing these books is kind of therapeutic?
Oh, it absolutely is. I feel like writing has always been my therapy since I was a little kid,
Right,
it's like you get just like, I guess, getting, like you said, getting lost in a different world. I love being able to do that. And so, yeah, writing those books was absolutely therapeutic. I feel like everything I write is therapeutic in some way.
It's such a magical process, isn't it?
I love it. I absolutely love it. And no matter what I'm writing, whether I'm doing the stories in adoption or, or my Unforgettable series, I'm very well known for my Unforgettable series. That's which is the Unforgettable Summer was my very first published novel. And that's won a bunch of awards. The entire series has actually won different awards.
Fabulous. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And then I have some for my new release, Leaving My Duty, got a silver literary titan, and I also got a gold literary titan for Breaking Cycles, which came out the year before. So
wow. Now, when you first started writing, did you ever imagine that this is the path that you would be on? That you would be writing so many different stories and also under two different names and win awards and also make movies, because don't forget about that. There are also some movies that you have under your belt as well. Yeah. So you never saw this, right? Like the main challenge, I would guess, because my main challenge in the beginning was just getting the story done and sticking to that one story, because that's hard.
The hardest thing in the world, because I have so many ideas in my head and sometimes my brain strays.
And how do you pick? That's the thing. Like, how do you pick? How do you choose sometimes there's a story and you just take it and you run with it. And then sometimes you run with it so far, and then you get another idea that you have to write. So you put that one on the side, and then you forget about that for a little while. Is that how it works for you?
Oh, absolutely. So Breaking Cycles actually was probably the book that took me the longest to write. Because there was something.
How long would you say that took?
I don't know. I feel like that one was a couple years.
Mm.
It was one of those books that I just felt like something wasn't sitting right and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I had these other ideas and I just started writing other stuff with that. And then I would go back to it. And that one was edited so many, I worked with a developmental editor, and I mean, that was went through Atmosphere Press for that one. And I feel like they were fantastic. They helped really develop the story where I needed it to go. And it wasn't, they just asked me the questions that I needed to be asked is what it was.
So it was a good fit.
Yeah.
I know in a lot of writer groups, this is a problem for a lot of writers, sticking to one story or not getting bored with the story that they're writing, because sometimes writers say, hey, I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know what my characters are doing. I'm a little bored with this project now, but I don't know. Am I supposed to stick with it? Am I supposed to, maybe put it on the side a little bit and start something else? Do you have any advice for writers?
I feel like if you're in that state, you definitely want to walk away, because you're going to end up rewriting everything you've written.
And the story's going to be maybe a little flat or stale, right?
Yeah, and you're not going to be happy with the results. And let me tell you, when Breaking Cycles was finally done, I was really happy with the result. I was happy with where it went, and I loved the characters.
Good.
And it's Breaking Cycles. That's one of those it does have a triple meaning. So he was kind of a loner, had a tough past, and was trying to kind of escape, I guess, and started. He took off on his motorcycle and kind of disappeared from his family, for years, and was doing his own thing, moving from place to place, kind of just trying to find his way. And then Breaking Cycles. Anyways, he gets in a motorcycle. One of the questions I asked is, what would make someone like that actually stop and have to address everything that, and the one thing is the only way I think he would is if he was forced to stop. So he starts the very beginning of the book. He gets in a motorcycle accident, and that's how it starts.
Now when you get really connected to a character, like let's say that character, how long does it take for you to, like, after the story is over, to like break free from that character? Or do they linger on?
I don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel like I love all my characters. I'm just very happy with who they are. And I always look for the person that's going to connect with them the best. What's the kind of person, like, again, same kind of thing. What kind of person would help bring them out? Someone that understood what they were going through, but not the same. You want someone that's more positive, but has also been through a lot, but a different kind of a lot.
And as you develop them, they really become real.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of hard to forget about a character that you developed that in your mind actually has a name, a face. Or let me ask you this. This is another interesting question, because not every writer sees clear faces when they think about their characters and their stories. Now, I don't. Everything to me, like, I know the color of the hair and the shape and, sometimes the kind of clothes they're wearing. But as far as visualizing someone, for me, it's always a blur. How about you?
I feel like I see someone, but I feel like there's, there could be a variety of people that actually fit that character, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. So you don't get, because I know some writers say, when I wrote this story, I had, I don't know, I'm just going to make up an actress. I had Kate Hudson in mind. Or,
I don't like thinking of actors.
Yes, I don't do that either. But some writers do. Some writers do.
but that's just me. I think part of it is because I do work in TV, film, and commercials and stuff. I freelance, and I do a lot of people, and it just I don't know. There's something about it that I just can't do that. But what I can do is once I write a character, I could maybe find someone that I think fits, if that makes sense. Oh, you would fit the character well.
That does make sense. I think maybe some writers do that
Kind of
because
like
it helps them
casting.
with the personality. Like sometimes maybe a writer doesn't know, or they want someone with, let's say, a character with like a bubbly personality, and they say, who do I associate with a bubbly personality? And that's when they would say maybe the actress that I mentioned, or a more serious-minded, like a serious personality. What actress? And then I think they go on to write that character. I don't know if they stick with that image in their mind or what, but it's just so many, like everybody has their own process. And I find it so interesting. The whole thing,
definitely.
No matter what a writer does or how they develop their characters, whether they know right away who and what they're writing, about, or if they do connect a celebrity or maybe someone they know, someone in their personal life, whatever it is, it's just such an interesting process. And that's another reason why I like to have these talks, because I love to like get into a writer's mind, because although we all write, we do it in different ways. And the process, even though some might be similar, they're never the same.
No,
you know what I mean?
and I
Because
get
our
that.
minds all work in such different ways.
I get that. It's funny because I kind of do that with names. I feel like I want the name to fit the time, the place, and the personality. I'm so specific about names when it comes in all my books. There's a reason they're named what they are.
So if you don't have, I have trouble with names sometimes. They do not come to me right away. So what do you do while you're writing? Like, do you know the character's name already before you start? Or do you get an idea and go, all right, I'm going to start writing this. And now the character, I have to mention the character. Do you think of a name on the spot? Do you put another name or word in its place? Do you use a name that you're going to change later on? Or maybe, who knows, maybe it sticks. What is your naming character process?
I feel like, I guess when I come up with an idea and I start to think about the character, who they are, where they come from, and you think about all those different things, I feel like, I guess for me, most of the time, I want the character's name. There's only been one time that I actually changed the character's name after I finished the story.
Because the whole time, did you know you were going to change the character's name, or as the character developed, they did not fit the name they had, or the name didn't fit them? That's what happened.
That's what happened. It's more like, no, this doesn't fit anymore. And yeah, that was actually for the recent anthology that I wrote.
Look at that.
The third book that came out this year was for Wreck My Halls. And there was 10 of us, 10 authors. It's all small town
romance.
But what did she say? I think she said Hallmark with Spice, or Hallmark After Dark, or something like that.
Oh, that's cute too. Yeah. That's cute.
Yeah. So, but my story in there was, so we each picked a Christmas song that our story to inspire our story.
Oh, wow. And what was
mine was The War Is Over, Happy Christmas.
Oh, did you listen to it while you wrote? Did you listen?
I listened to it several times when I was kind of jotting down ideas and stuff.
Okay. So now, since
I went back to it a couple times, but after that, I was pretty good.
Okay. So now, you said when you were jotting down ideas, typically, are you a plotter? Do you plot your scenes?
No, I'm usually a pantser.
Usually, yeah, me too. Fly by the seat of your pants. It's fun. I get it though, where people want to be organized and they want to know what they're writing. And sometimes I wish I could be that way because sometimes I sit and I feel like a little stuck and I'm like, well, what's going to happen next? Where another writer, some writers use index cards, right?
Yeah, I
And they
can't.
have scenes and they have dialogue and they have a whole big thing on a wall I've seen. They know exactly
No.
beginning, middle, end, and then a lot of the stuff they don't even have to fill in because they even have that written down. I don't know how long. I haven't talked to a writer like that yet, but I'm sure I will because I'm also curious when they start writing, if they plot it out. Is it after they plot? You know what I mean? Because with us, we write as we write. Something strikes us. And that's another thing. Do you have a set time when you write? Do you say, well, this is my window of opportunity. I'm going to write at 10 a.m. or 11
I
a.m. Like, what is your
try to
process?
do that.
How hard is
My
that?
issue is things always come up, especially
Mm,
so, but I do try to make sure there's always time to get it done. But the
and
best time is when nobody's around. And at a time like this, both kids are home from college. Not as easy.
yeah, no, very, very hard to write. And you have to be in the mood, right? Your
You
head
have to be
has
in the
to be in
mood.
the game.
You
So
have to be in the right headspace.
yeah. And if you know you have to make breakfast for someone, like, because like you said, the kids are home. If you know you have to make breakfast or they're hungry or you have a load of laundry or the dog has got to go out or whatever the case, or you have something in the back of your mind that, you have to take care of on your to-do list, whatever the case may be, it's hard just to like drop everything and say, all right, I'm going to sit down and write because you have to
Yeah.
really throw yourself in an entirely different world with
Yeah,
different
and that's the
people
thing.
too.
I end up having to reread to get myself back in the same headspace. And then by the time you do that, even
Yes.
though you know what it says.
Reread what you wrote.
Yes.
Right? That's what I do. Reread to
Mhm.
get myself back in that feeling, back in that place and time
Right.
where it's just happening at that moment. Yeah, I do that too. I read sometimes an enormous amount of pages depending on how far I am into the story. I'll
Yeah,
read, and that's so
same
time
here.
consuming in itself,
Same
right?
here.
And then if
Yep.
the concentration is broken, you gotta start all over again.
That's the issue. Like, don't call me. Don't talk to me.
Do you shut your phone off and stuff like that? Because I don't, and I really should.
I don't. But the kids, I just can't.
Yeah. And if your phone rings and does break your concentration, not if it's family, if it's, like a spammy call or something like that, and you look over and look at it, does that ever get you aggravated and like throw
Yeah,
you right out of it? Because you get annoyed. Yeah, right. That happens. That's why we should really, it's kind of hard, yeah, when we have family and kids and
absolutely.
stuff like that to put the phone away. But yeah, sometimes that'll take you right out of the mood. And then if you're into like a really deep writing session and then you're ready to wrap it up for the day, for whatever the reason, does the mood stay with you for a while? Like if you just wrote something sad, or if you just wrote something so deep, does that stay with you as you like leave
It
your writing area and now have to go on with your regular life, whether it's
it
talking to
does, especially
family?
certain things, they just stick with you, and it's funny
Mhm.
because 'cause I'll be, um, writing or rereading or even after like you said, right after you moved on and, you know, somebody will look at you, whether it be my husband or the kids, or they'll look at you and, "What's wrong?"
Exactly,
Or
that happens to me
or
too.
even, "What's so funny?" when you're, writing something you don't even mean to do it, like
Yeah,
my emotions tend to show when I'm doing anything.
yeah, that happens to me too. I could think of something sad I wanna write or something that the character went through, and I could tear up from it, or I could something funny will strike me like, "Oh, I should write that. That's funny dialogue," and I'll laugh out
Yeah,
loud, and
what's
yeah,
so fun?
I think it's something that
Nothing.
you never really separate. Like, you could close the laptop, close the book, put down the pen or pencil, whatever it is you use, but you can never really totally disconnect. It's not like you can unplug and it's off.
No,
It's with you,
no,
right? 24 hours a day. You're
it's
always
constant, and it's not but I'm good with that. It's kinda like
me too.
anyone who's a book lover, even if you're not a writer, I feel like you can relate because there's books that and characters that stick with you that you really enjoy,
Mhm.
even if it's TV shows that you like instead, TVs or movies, same kinda thing. You
Yeah.
have something that you connect with that you just like, "Wow," and I don't know. For my characters, I feel like they're a family. You know them well. You know who they
Right.
are, what they've been through,
You
how
put
they
so
got to
much
be where
into it.
they are, and just everything about them. It's just there's good, there's bad, there's ugly, there's beautiful. It's life, and that's
Mhm.
I love writing that.
Isn't that the truth? It is life. And then when I ask you about your writing process and when you begin and how long it takes you to get out of that, we both agree that there really is no getting out of it,
Never.
right? You never
No,
get out of it. You're in it. It's something you're in all the time, but it's such a wonderful place to be. Like you said, you enjoy that.
I do.
It really is such a wonderful place to be. And you said whether it's books or movies, I agree, because sometimes you could watch a series and you're desperate to know what is going to happen to that character, but you have to wait sometimes a whole week to see that. So it's the same thing in a book. That's where that term comes, right? One more chapter. It's on mugs, it's on t-shirts, just one more
Absolutely.
chapter.
I
Because
love
you,
that.
as the reader,
There's
you
bookstores with that name.
really want to know. I'm sorry, there's what?
Bookstores
Oh
with the
yeah, there's
name.
bookstores with that name. There's just so much more you want to know. So it's hard sometimes to wait a week for a television show, or it's hard to put down that book. It just really is. You have to know what happens as a reader. Now, how about as a writer? Do you feel like while you're writing a scene and it's like a really pivotal scene or it's life-changing for the character, sometimes do you feel pressed to go on? Or do you
100%. Oh my gosh, yes. It's funny because I was just, talking about this yesterday with both, from a reader reviewer's viewpoint as well as a writer. It's like, I just want, I'm like, I'm at a point right now with what I'm writing. I'm like, I just need to escape, hide
Mm,
out, and write, and want to be left alone and just type, just because I have to move it forward. It's just,
yeah,
you're at the point where, no, I need to get through this part.
right. You feel like sometimes you could explode if
Oh,
you don't get it
absolutely.
out, right? You're like filled
Like,
up, like it's just like water being turned on, and you're just filling up, filling up, filling up, and it's gotta come out of somewhere. So you have to
absolutely.
sit down and write that. You can't,
It's funny because too, I think thoughts or things will come at you, so many different times throughout the day, and night.
mhm,
um,
yeah.
I will type. I have so many notes in the note app in my phone. I have, um, notepads and books, or like little journal kind of things. I have, anywhere that, I do voice messages. I do that look like nonsense when you look at it, because there's no punctuation whatsoever.
Right, right, right.
Because I don't have
What does
time to
this
say
mean?
period and question mark when I'm talking. I just need to get it out. So
Yeah. Exactly. Now, since you have your notes in so many different places, and me too, I write things down in my phone. Sometimes I
you
write it
don't
on a
want to
scrap of
forget.
paper. Do you ever like look back? Do you remember to look back at it? Because sometimes I don't. I don't even know
Sometimes I
sometimes where I
don't,
put something I wrote.
but
And I'm
then
like,
you look back and you end up using those for different things. Maybe,
mm,
because I always do go back to it. It's just a matter of when.
right, right. And
And
how about,
sometime it may be during editing, and you're like, oh, I forgot about that. I want to incorporate that.
does dream does dreaming ever go into your writing? Or
100%. How does it not?
would you believe I do not dream about my stories. I don't dream about
Well,
my stories, my characters. It's crazy.
it's not necessarily about my current one that I'm working on or something, but I may have a dream and I write down the dream, and it ends up fitting into something somewhere else some other time.
Mm,
Oh
all
yeah.
right. Well, that's super interesting. That is something that has not happened to me. I know a lot of writers talk about dreams. Some writers wrote an entire novel on one dream.
Yes, I know that too.
You
Scripts
know?
too. I know I know a couple of writers who have written full scripts.
Yeah. From a
movies and
dream
TV shows from.
or a recurring dream too. Sometimes they have a recurring dream and they just feel like they have to write that story.
Yep,
That's another interesting way to go about it too. But
definitely.
it proves another point, the same point about while we're writers and storytellers, we all do not have the same process.
Oh,
And it's
definitely
just
not.
so
There's so
interesting. And
many
it's
different ways to be able to become. That's the thing with writing is if you love to write, there is a reader out there for you, you know?
I believe that too.
I
Yep.
feel like there's readers that will love your story. Um, everyone's not going to love your story. It's just not reality
It's just the way it
because
is.
everybody has different tastes.
Yes. We don't
And
love
that's
every book we
okay.
read. We don't love every movie we watch, right?
Right.
No
And
one loves
keep
everything
in
they
mind, you're not, you don't need, you got to do it for you. You got to
Yes.
write for you, in my opinion. And that's when the best writing, when I see the best writing is when I'm writing for myself. I feel like if I'm, if I start to write, I don't know, like I feel like there's been writing that is more forced. Every once in a while you can feel like, okay, I'm forcing this. This is, yeah, it's fine, but it's just fine. It's not where it should be. And I felt like that, I guess that goes back to where I said when I originally started Breaking Cycles, that was where it was coming to. And at the end, I was thrilled with the result. Sorry, the sun's moving and it's bothering.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. Go ahead. I get it. Lighting is something glare in my glasses. I can see it.
Yeah, but that's when the result you get, it gets. I was really thrilled with the result in the end, but yeah, I got stuck. It was good, but I was forcing it, and I didn't, or it was fine. I guess not even. It was fine. Yeah, and
Right.
and I know people would probably, there were some that would have liked it, but I needed it to be more.
I think mood has a lot to do with it too. Like someone could read a book and it's just they're not in that headspace or they're not in that mood, but then they go, "Oh, I hate it." And then a year later, things might have changed, or even for the day, their attitude may be a little different. They may be happy.
Or time in your life.
And yeah, a time in your life. And then you pick up the book and go, "Oh, I'm gonna give this book another chance." And then you're like, "Wow, you know what? I really see things in this story that I didn't see before, or I could connect with these characters now in a way that I couldn't before." And it could be a time in the life. It could be the mood. It could be so many different things.
Yeah.
Books
And
really
it's funny because you think about it with all the different that's one thing, I always say you can't read your reviews. It's hard not to.
I love to read my reviews.
It's
I know that's
hard
another
not
thing a lot of
to.
writers don't
I
agree
know.
upon.
I say that, and it's really hard not to. I've read a lot of them. I know I have. But then you come across a negative one, and it weighs on you, and you can't. And that's the thing that I always try to. The reason I always say that is because, okay, there is billions of readers out there, billions of people that like books, and you just weren't necessarily there. That wasn't the story they were looking for at the time, or that wasn't the kind of, it's
Right.
it's okay. As long as you're confident, you feel good. Your editors have been through it. You have, I'm sorry, but no matter how good you are, everyone needs an editor.
Right. Right. They say you can't edit your own work. They do say that. And then there's editors that do everything. But then people say, well, you shouldn't have one editor that covers it all. That's why you need a line editor. That's why you need,
right. You have a developmental editor, a copy editor, a line editor.
I just was on somebody's show and they were talking a lot about editing. Now, I'm not an editor. And well, you know what? We won't even get into that. But one thing I did want to say is getting back to, some readers are not going to be crazy about the book. I feel, and this is what I always say too, if you had, and I think I've heard this other places, If you had interest to write the story, someone is going to have an interest to read the story.
100%. You
And we
just got to
can't,
find your audience.
exactly. And you have to tell your story the way you want to tell your story, and not try to maybe cater to the market, or, like what's going on at the time,
That's what
what's
I was
hot.
looking for.
You
And
have to tell a legitimate story from your point of view, right? Because a reader
be
can pick up
real.
on pick up on that too. Now,
Yeah.
and then I just want to go back to reviews for a second, because I did an episode on this on YouTube about reviews, because I'm in a lot of writing groups, and I like to read the comments of the writers, because I like to support the writers in any way that I can. So I try to contribute something to the groups that I do belong to. So a couple of months ago, a writer did write, I do not read my reviews. Now, me personally, and I'm going to tell you why. This is why I feel like it's such a mistake not to, but I respect anybody who doesn't want to read their reviews.
I agree. I
get
do
it.
read them, but you got to be careful.
You do have to be careful, because you can't go down that rabbit hole, because
That's what
every
I'm
reader's
looking for.
experience is different. But this is the only reason why I want to mention about reading the reviews, because I feel writers are missing an opportunity of using, even if you just look at your reviews and you see the stars and you go, all right, 5 stars, I'm going to read this one. Or 2 stars, I don't want to read that one. You can pick and choose, I guess. But I do feel like sometimes there's some constructive criticism in the reviews.
100%.
But mainly, so many writers say, I don't know how to market my books. I don't know how to find readers. I feel like when they are not reading these reviews and using them in content, or creating a trailer, when they're not sharing these reviews, because not every reader goes on Amazon and says, oh, let me look up Bob Smith's books. They don't do that. So they're not going to read the reviews of how fabulous the books are that Bob Smith wrote. So you take that glowing review that you got maybe last month or last year, and you share it. And you say, here's what
that
readers are
100%.
saying. You know what I mean? So I just feel like a lot
and you
of
have
writers,
the ones you can add to, your editorial reviews, on Amazon on that page,
I feel,
I definitely have a bunch of those.
And you could add
and
trailers too on Amazon for your book to
absolutely.
try
And
to,
don't get me wrong, I actually do read my reviews, but I'm very good at compartmentalizing.
that's great.
And
Yeah, 'cause
as
a lot
a
of
new
writers don't.
author, a lot of people aren't good at doing that. They'll look at a review and be like, yeah, that's not,
It'll haunt them
it will haunt them.
forever.
And then they struggle
Yeah.
to write.
Yes.
And I think you have to learn how to take and process those kinds of things if you're going to tackle reading reviews. And
Yeah.
that's kind of more what I mean by that.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, not everybody, I guess, should read reviews. It depends on, like you said, the way
have
you
to
handle
learn.
the reviews. So not every writer can do that, but there's some movies and some books that people love. Like some people say, oh my God, Ernest Hemingway, he was the best author ever. And then other people are like, what is so great about this Ernest Hemingway? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are writers out there who are legends, they're icons, their books are considered classics. And other readers do not feel that way.
Right.
So that's just the way it's going to be. So I feel
well,
like
there's some I do feel that way about that are like that, and there's some that I don't feel that way about that are like that.
Me too.
And there's so many indie authors that are out there that I think are so talented and so good and should get more praise than they get. And I think when it comes to indie authors, people have it's sometimes a harder look than what they should be getting. So it's kind of too bad. There's so much talent out there. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is most indie authors are, the difference is with the big publishers, you get everything done for you and you get a very small percentage of the royalties. And with an indie author, you're paying for all those services too, because you still need them done. So you have to pay for it out of your pocket, and then you get more of the royalties. So it's you're still going through the exact same process. It's just the different people that actually are doing the work.
Yes.
So
would you recommend for a new writer or an indie author, beta readers, would you recommend them using readers that are willing to help them along with the story?
absolutely.
Because that's free, and a lot of writers, I've never done that, but I think with my next book, that is something that I am going to do. I want to get a little bit of feedback.
I've used beta readers, but I don't use, I've used beta readers for sure, especially with some stories I feel like they're needed.
And when we write, any author, right, we envision things in our mind. We don't always translate that onto the paper, onto the screen. And the reader will pick up on it. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing. And that's one of the reason beta readers are so good. And, the beta readers are free. And that it's almost like getting an additional editor, but make sure you take into consideration where things are coming from, and it still remains your perspective and your point of view, because that's, can be tough too. So it's really, but they are really beneficial.
Yeah. They can help, and they can pick up the things that maybe we as, the author didn't pick up. Right. Even, spelling, typos, anything that we didn't see. Because we could reread the same line over and over again and not pick up the error where someone can, because the way we process it in our brain, it looks correct and it's incorrect.
Like I said, everybody needs an editor, and whether, even if, no matter what level, because that's a fact. You're not going to see, hold on, I got to close the window. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee.
Better. But you're not going to see things that because you have written the story, you know what it's supposed to say, you know what it's about, you know your characters, you know the setting, you know everything about that story. So when you're reading it, you might not process, because your brain already knows it. So you might not process that piece isn't there, or there's a small piece missing, or it doesn't translate that way, or that kind of thing. So there are those little pieces that you definitely need to have those people for.
So true.
And there's also it's funny, like repetition, I feel like, is another one. There's so many books that I will read and you see so much repetition, and those are the times that those line editors really would have been valuable.
Well,
just because every single one of us has words, whether you realize it or not, that you repeat. I know. Yep. I do. I get called on them every single time. So
it's so
and you know it, and you try to make it better, and you may, but maybe there's another one you pick up on the way accidentally.
Yeah. And which one do you choose when you have to remove 1 out of the 10 and you say, oh, this word fits there so well, but I already used it 10 times. Now on what I use to write, there's find a word. So I type a word in and it'll tell me where it is in the story, how many times I used it. So I have gone back, in my story to remove those words, but it's hard. And then sometimes
you don't notice it though.
Yeah, sometimes you don't notice it. Well, that's why it's a good thing if you're using a word a lot and then you pull it up and it finds the word and then you just try to replace it. But that alone is a struggle. But I've read, I don't remember, of course, I don't want to call out any books in particular, but I recently read a book and the word said was used a lot, said. And I was like, wow, this is a traditionally published book, popular book. And they always say, try not to use the word said. But I think I only realized it because I write and they say, whoever they are, they say, try not to use the word said as much. So that's why, as I read it, I'm like, wow, they're really using this word said a lot. And then I read another traditionally published book by a very well-known author. And I had to look up the reviews of the book, where some people loved the book, where other people didn't. But there was a missing child. And every chapter in the middle of the story, or kind of towards the beginning, was beginning where the police were coming to the house of the parents. And the parents were kind of like repeating the same thing over and over again, like they were worried. Is this the day I'm going to get arrested? I think maybe the author thought that they were making the story interesting, like maybe the parents would be charged or arrested, or maybe they found evidence. But for me as the reader, I was like, oh, can we talk about something else here? Because I feel like I'm reading the same chapter over and over again. Now, that's a traditionally published book with all the bells and whistles, right? Should have been a great editor, and they should have went through everything, and nobody picked that up. But the readers did, because I like to read reviews of the books that I read, especially when readers make, there's a lot of great reviews, and I don't feel the same way. So those are the reviews I really like to read, because I want to see who else agrees with me.
Yeah,
so that's
I've done that. There's a very, very popular series that I was not a fan of.
I may know what you're talking about too, because a lot of people say, what is so great about this? But that's where we go back to, there's a reader for every book.
And that's what it is. Reader. And that's okay. And I mean, the writing was good. Don't get me wrong. I felt, anyway.
Yeah, I gotcha. But how interesting was it to talk today? I'm so glad we got to do this. We're going to have to do it again.
We didn't even touch on anything. What are you?
Huh?
We didn't even touch on anything.
I know we didn't. Well, you know what? I kind of think we touched on some things for aspiring writers, some interesting things. Or
definitely.
I think we covered a couple of topics, and I do like to talk about things that I don't see really discussed on other writing shows or podcasts. There's things that I find that are not addressed, because there's questions I had too in the beginning, and they were never really addressed in things I would watch. So I really want to try to do that for other writers too. They don't even have to be aspiring writers. They could be writers that are already published. We always have questions. That is for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because I want to work on, I've been looking at doing something like that, because I get asked certain questions all the time. And so I've been wanting to do something similar as well. So I understand.
And it's interesting. We all learn from each other. It's such a great community. But when we can touch on topics that aren't talked about, I think, and a writer can say, hey, that's exactly the way I feel.
It's funny that I wanted to mention, when you said the said comment too, that, he said, she said, it's funny because you see the extremes with that. I feel like one of the things I always say, I actually have a said table that has all these different words, that you can use for said. But the thing is the reason for the replacement isn't to give another tag. The reason for a replacement for something like that would be to show something, not tell that you said something, but actually show something. So saying, whether it be some kind of emotion or some kind of way that the character reacted, or a movement maybe to add to it, or something like that. So there's a lot more that those changes of words can actually do. There's times that said can work, but most of the time I feel like that's a tag. And tags aren't always needed if you know who's talking.
Exactly. Yep.
And you go from one, like I said, and the reason I said extreme is because you have the writers that, do a lot of tags, and me, sometimes I will over tag. But my point is I like to put in the emotions, what they're doing, their movements, the things like that. So, and then if I have to, and then I remove some of the ones that are more just a tag. I want to, because when you see the movements and the mannerisms and the different things like that, you see the character so much better than you just do through dialogue.
Yes. Period. And you feel it. You feel it by their actions.
If you have, but then you have the extreme where you leave out all of that, and it's just dialogue. And one of the things which I feel is more of a script. So because that's what you want when you're script writing, is just you want the dialogue. You don't want any of the other additional details and stuff. So you got to find, I feel like, your happy medium.
Right. I think that's an excellent point that you brought up, though. Instead of eliminating the word said or changing it out for another word, it's the perfect time to give the reader show, don't tell.
Which is the most important thing in writing, is show, don't tell.
That's an even better replacement for a writer, right, who's working on their story. If you find you're using too many words, eliminate the entire word or tag and add an action.
Right.
I love it. I think that's a great way to end today's episode as well, because that is something now some writers can say, wow, I'm going to go back into my story now, and I am going to remove this word, and I'm going to show and not tell. I think that's a wonderful way to wrap it up.
It is. It's the most, I feel like that's the most important rule in writing, is showing, not telling, especially with.
I love it. I love it. Well, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate being here.
I'm definitely going to think about everything we talked about, because just like when we write, things stay with us for a while. So this whole conversation is probably going to stay with me for a while, and it will definitely be airing, and I'll let you know when.
Okay.
And yeah, this was great. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was so great to see you on here, and it was so great to talk to you and catch up a little. We caught up a little bit, but we're definitely going to do this again throughout the year. So
that sounds good.
Because I love it. All right. So I'll see you soon. And all your books, right, can be found on?
Pretty much everywhere. I do have them on the shelf behind me, but I'm on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, wherever you read, you can pretty much find me.
Perfect.
So, yeah, absolutely.
All right, great. Well, I'll let you get back to creating, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.